So we know that many cycles of time are coming together, and we could see that in like fade-throughs. And what I mean by that is like our own perception can bring about our own vibratory rate of our human being can bring about what we see and experience in this life. So I just wanted to say that time is conditioned upon the person's awareness to it. So therefore, I see like consciousness fluctuations happening. And if you view it like in a cyclical formation, for example, like the Middle East energy surge that's happening there, it seems to have happened before. And various consciousness levels in humanity, people wanting freedom and equal rights and such. And the 1960s brought that to us with the surge of that consciousness. And it appears and seems that different wars bring about different consciousnesses as well. I mean, the whole linear timeline could be changed by whoever wins the historical war. Therefore, we have to dig deeper into history and find more cycles that are happening at the same time that the ones we read in the history books are happening. So these overlaps is where we can learn much about consciousness and the way in which people have grown throughout the ages, because it appears that consciousness is, or could be proven to be, directly related to the magnetic field of the Earth. And it is said that that's why we have to get our energy fields around our bodies to be strong so that it can, so to speak, protect us in the failing of a magnetic field, for example. But so these consciousness fluctuations are happening, and it seems to be present themselves. Some could be short or fast, but there is also intense energy that comes along with this. So that brings me to talk about the importance of the now moment. The now moment. Everybody who's meditated and things, you always hear that about the now moment. Be one with the earth, grasshopper, and all that. But it's true. There is a connection that happens through all of our energy bodies, and we've been talking about that here on Breaking Through to Truth. And Chelsea Flor has brought up some examples of esoteric information that goes right along with this. And we have all talked about different alignments in planetary heavens that cause and create energy to happen in a more intense way. That's why people who are using dark energies or light energies can use these alignments to put your will forward and make things happen. So I was thinking the other day that we have to be moving in more of an, in football you have defensive and offense, so we have to be moving in an offensive, not in a, if I say offensive way, that might mean something else to other people, but we need a forward movement. We can't just play defense all the time, like we have to be the ones in charge of the game. We have to be the ones with the ball. So therefore, week by week, we're going to load up our toolboxes so we can, go from A to Z and plus around and reach the alpha and the omega, so to speak, the aurora borealis, the beginning and the end, so we can move up to the next level. So I believe that in this time, meditation is great, and just swimming and being able to basically stop time is what it is around you. But people who are in the regular schedule is hard to do, perhaps, but they can take breaks, or their mind can be somewhere else. But like different natives use the hummingbird as a function of this. Intense little creatures like the butterfly when they mate, and the vibration of the hummingbird. Anyways, vibration is everything, but those are just examples of intense energy from a little creature. So Merkaba fields are very good to research, but this is not the time to go deeply into that, but you can Google it, or somebody who's listening could put a link in there for Merkaba video. And that's like a stepping stone too. Everything is, right? Depending on what part of this logarithmic spiral we're conditioned to looking at. What tools are we using? So the now moment will become even more important when more people tap into this consciousness grid that we here at Revolution Radio are stimulating, where people can open their minds to new ideas, and that expands the gap between the old information and the new information, and Deepak Chopra goes into expanding the gap on another show. So this surge in consciousness can be, equivalent to the 100th monkey. Many people have, learned that back in the 90s. And I don't know if I need to go through that, but consciousness vibration helps other people to tap in. You create a field, and this resonance vibration makes it easier for other people to tap in. So it even happens with one smile at a time. It's as simple as that. But what it comes down to is the heart. And this tapestry that's created, I believe, a hologram could even present itself. And through our hearts, that's an important organ in the body because it relates many things, it connects many things. Because it's the energy that beats everybody's heart that makes creation pulsate through the universe. So I believe that it is possible to, become the co-creators that we're destined to be by using energy fields or, learning about sacred geometry or divine geometry, as the alchemist said. But consciousness is growing, and more people are able to understand more of the picture of the importance of perhaps the now movement and creating like a grid of energy that resonates to a higher way of being, basically. And I believe that this today could be called the consciousness vibration of the waking human. So we have different hues that make up our rainbow body. And these hues work in coordinate with, color, shape, frequency, light, and being able to, put a protective shield around your body by resonating your chakras at their appropriate harmonics that connect with everything else that is of the same vibration. So it does permeate fields because vibration moves not only through wires, but we have we have different fields of energy around the planet. Everybody knows that. But this rainbow body that all humans have connect many levels of light codes on many parallels as well, depending on how the light goes through. And depending on the hue one mimics or the harmonics that they are in a harmonic resonance with. So the rainbow body orders the space, and the space is in time is where the XYZ axis equals the next variable time. So all space becomes in the now moment. But consciousness growth is logarithmic, and it is the same code of growth as the growth curve of everything that's alive and breathing on the planet. So that's an interesting parallel that we've already discussed on other shows. But the consciousness fluctuations do have a relationship with our magnetic field. And if we can maintain our energy around our body, then our magnetic field, for our own personal magnetic field, and then collectively we probably could do something with that, because people have talked about that if we have a decrease in our magnetic field, we could lose our memory. And there's various movies out there that are interesting. That Cowboy and Alien show, just saw that. There was an episode in there where a guy lost his memory. And anyways, so we could lose our memories. We may feel ringing in our ears. And that could be because the magnetic fluctuations, as well as different mammals, beaching themselves on the land. And basically these changes in the field around the Earth is what we have evidence that she's changing all the time. We have more earthquakes and volcanoes and various fields that are altering. And in turn, our DNA gets altered by these fields. So, and what does this come down to? Well, like expanding the space to where 0 point happens and there's like no time then, because everything, like polarities are equal. And that's kind of, but we are formed out of thoughts, basically. So your thoughts are going to be important when, like, there's a space of 0 point that happens. When the magnetic field goes down, and then there's going to be a space in there. So just kind of get ready or prepared. And preparedness is like through a consciousness preparedness is what I'm talking about. So we are formed out of thoughts which feel the weight of space and time, into which being is cast. So these thoughts give you your own unique space and time in the drama of the incarnation. So therefore, it stands to reason that we do have more control than we know about different outcomes. And if we reach different energy fields, there may be different rules for those natural laws. But to be prepared, and through sacred geometry, you can mimic the direction of where you may go through the different shapes of the next one that's supposed to come. So we have a full moon coming up in about 2 days.
Full moon is on Tuesday, and it's also going to be in alignment with Jupiter. So we have the great gas giant and Jupiter opposing the sun, with total reflection of the sun's radiation. And what that means is that we've got a super big magnet behind us, which also means that it could be directing anything the sun could throw off, or anything that incoming planetary, asteroids or whatever is out there in our atmosphere could be attracted in our direction because of the moon and Jupiter in this location. But it sounds like to me, DawnJah, that you're creating a movement rather than a moment in time.
Well, and movements, I guess it's all a matter of how long you want the word.
Well, no, if you gather up enough consciousness together, then there certainly is a movement in this direction of consciousness. It's almost like in Theosophy we talk about the point, which is everywhere, whose circumference is nowhere. And so that singularity of 0 point is about that singularity of the first moment of light being everywhere. And you are the center of that universe.
Well, then light reflects, and how it's received is...
But light also radiates. If you could be the radiation of that light, then you are the source. It's like being one with the source. When you're looking for that 0 point, you want to be one with the source.
Well, I think that the utopia that we create is when more people are on board with reflecting the source. Like a gentleman today drew 2 cards, or yesterday, for this weekend, and one was Mother Earth and the other one was the sun. And he went into great detail about the reflection of the sun and how important those rays of light are to our being able to survive. And then I started thinking about, okay, well, we're in this spectra of light that we can only see certain things, and, we could feel and hear certain things, but we can't really see energy move. We see the effects of it. Like, our energy is increasing to more gamma rays, so that's changing us day by day. I feel like people's DNA is changing, so they're able to accept more light and see other realms or communicate with things that are unseen, or beings that are unseen in the physical but are here consciously.
There's so many forces out there that we term metaphysical because it's in the unseen world. And of course, absolutely, science can measure pretty much most of all that. The big one is magnetism. It is absolutely, as a child, you learn to put a magnet underneath a piece of paper and see the directions that the metal filings go, and that shows you a representation of the fields of energy around the poles of our planet. And if it weren't for this great magnetic energy body that we have surrounding our planet, we would be hit with all kinds of solar radiation that we could not defend ourselves from. So the idea is to maintain this energetic body of the Earth, whether or not we decide to become the stewardships of Mothership planet Earth, because what we are is this great big spaceship circling in orbital mechanics of the solar system here. And as we do that, consciousness needs to direct it in some way in order for it to be healthy. And if consciousness is one of war and one of human nature defiling oneself, then what does that say for us as the stewards of this planet?
That we haven't learned the rules yet. That, perhaps this is another go-around for those who haven't learned, are still going to learn that lesson. And it is possible that other people will experience other things. I believe that to be true because of a vibration that's set forth. But we can only, shed our vibration or light upon everyone to, make it to their highest calling this time around. So we don't have to relearn things like that, like lose your life. That is incredible. And for people who are, sacrificing their lives for the cause, I just have to put my hats off to that. But it says in the Keys of Enoch about magnetic reversals that man must face the fact that magnetic field reversals contributing to the rise and fall of species and civilization can occur very rapidly as a result of triggering events, such as the motion by cosmic oscillations in combination with the Earth's magnetic field. I think that we are, since we have awareness this time around, and awareness keeps increasing, and some make it through to the next cycle to keep the awareness surfacing, and then our unseen brothers and sisters probably came down here, gave us some information so we could jumpstart ourselves. Well, we've come to this point right now so we don't do it all over again. I believe that we do have tools in our toolbox that we haven't had before in our written history. And also we are using other scientists' information from the 50s that have seemed to disappear in school curricula, so where we can have these geniuses start working on this material so we can reach new heights of information, and how you put that together by using it as soul growth, not about getting stuck in a war or making weapons of war, which that's how people through time have gotten stuck. I mean, when the first metal was made for the sword, it's just, okay, when are we going to learn that one? And then it just escalated. So anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But the tools that we have in our toolbox now about fields that we can't see, and different people have experienced various things by using esoteric information and sacred geometry lineups and such for creating what they need of an outcome. And thought alone, I have experienced thought. In my younger days, I would go up to this mountain where I'd love to go, and then a logging truck kept coming down. So I go, wow, this can't happen, so I mentally went into that engine and started pulling out these wires like I was a gremlin or something, just as an experiment. Well, that vehicle stayed on the side of the road over 2 months, and it had its engine hood open. And I thought, well, it must have done something because there it sits, and I initiated that by consciously doing something. So whether that was good or bad for the trucker or I always say in the best interest of everyone involved in the lesson, and perhaps the lesson was for me to know what we can do as humans by using our energy bodies, basically the whole force field of us, the light body within, and it resonates out, creates harmonic, music, basically. And that's why, if you see another person of a lightness too, you just, smiles come on your face and you don't even know each other. You've done that in the store many times. But so resonance finds resonance. And, well, that's what I was talking about. I just envisioned, like, if you had a whole football field of people. I always notice that the Packers have the best fans. I think that might be a fact. Because when they're 14 years old, they get their season ticket passes. Because the parents put them on the list at birth. So it takes approximately 14 years, and that was about 1995 when I heard that statistic. So it could be even a wider spread. But that fact there alone tells me that, people, if they work together, they have a lot of energy that's, that could be put to forward movement. So we were talking about the magnetic fields and basically how humans can have a say in that. If they, if we're in if you could feel our highest essence, I would say that a grid would have to come over us where everyone can tap into it, or you'd have to be in the room with the same people. I don't know exactly, but, sometimes you don't think about the specific outcomes, you just kind of put it forward. And then other people build on it, on what we're talking about here today, about energy that we can't see. But we know through the ages they've been using this energy to create things that they need in the moment. So now the need has come up and brought together like an idea. So about just energetic movements and how we've had energetic movements throughout time. So using Jupiter and the opposition of the full moon. Is it opposition of the full moon?
When the moon is full, it is opposite the sun in order for it to reflect the full sun radiation. And Jupiter happens to be in the same position. So if you look out into the sky, the night sky, you will see a bright star in close proximity to that of the moon. As it enters into Gemini, they should be pretty much exactly conjunct.
So, that tells me that there's intense energy happening out here. And, well, And we know from, well, in the last 2 weeks ago, we've had some big earthquakes, but as of late, I haven't looked within the last 2 days. So when there's intense energy and these gas giants are opposing our sun, does that make it less stable with the tug and pulls, or could this be, a natural occurrence, or is there anything that could be?
These are natural cycles, but what is different right now is the fact that Saturn is almost exactly opposite that of Jupiter. So you have a tug and war between those two giants and us being on the side of Jupiter. But in most cases, we've always been coined Jupiter's darling, because Jupiter has saved us from so many asteroids and things of incoming, comets and things of this nature by pulling it into its orbit, rather than it hitting and striking that of the inner planetoids of our system. And so we've been really blessed by the fact that the large giant out there has such great magnetism in order to do this. And its magnetism, whether you want to call it its gravitational field, has, always worked in our benefit. But in some cases, if something is out there and we're riding along with Jupiter in alignment to it, a geometrical alignment to it, then it's going to attract something directly in our path. And it's going to strike us before it gets to Jupiter. So sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. So of major concern, more than anything, is the next coming year. The mini solar system of Nibiru and Wormwood is about to, make its appearance into the heavens. And, all telescopes, amateur astronomers out there are looking to see if this is a reality. And if it is a reality, there is nothing left to do but have disclosure. And when truth is met with most of the humans on this planet, where the governments have to come clean and tell us what's going on, what does that mean? I mean, they're not going to tell us the whole truth, but certainly they're going to have to tell us something about what they've been studying for the last 50 years since the discovery of Planet X, and then all of a sudden it got washed under the rug, and other things that, were taking place.
So this is the same cycle that they talk about in the Bible about being wormwood, and also Christ said something to the fact that the sons of men will be like in the time of Noah. Does that all relate to this cycle that we're coming up into?
Well, the time frame by which we read biblical records is not as accurate as we would like to believe. In other words, the earth was not created 6,000 years ago, nor did perhaps that flood take place exactly 6,000 years ago. It may have taken place 8,000 years ago. But the way history writes itself over and over again, from it being an oral tradition into a written language, the calendars sort of get changed around a little bit. And all we have to go by is the fact that we have these great astronomical buildings of stone out there that give us a history that goes back hundreds of thousands of years. And I'm talking about, the multiplication of the Kali Yuga and the Dwapara Yuga, the Treta Yuga, and the Sato Yuga. And all this is being a significant geometry of numbers based on 4, 3, 2.
Now, how long is each yuga? Is it like 5,125, like from the Mayan count?
No.
Or is it
the way
a different
it works
number?
is, first of all, the precession of the equinox is almost, it's 25,920 years. And if you were to divide that into 6, you would get 4,320. The 432 is a significant multiple or harmonic of that of a Kali Yuga. So one Kali Yuga is 432,000 years long, and then the Yuga prior to that is actually double that in length. So what happens is it's quadruple, triple, double, and then single. But you add them all together, and you have the addition of almost 10 Kali Yugas.
So do they build upon each other then?
They do build upon each other, and with each building upon each other is the great ages for what the metamorphosis of the planet Earth has to go through in order to support life there.
Well, that's interesting because that is logarithmic. All change, all growth curves are logarithmic. And I believe consciousness goes directly in line with that same golden mean or Fibonacci number, depending on how much you take it. This is Breaking Through to Truth, and we're back from the break. We're talking about the harmonics of the various cycles that we're coming upon, and how if we resonate our energy bodies that are around us, I know that might sound a little out for some people, but we do have an energy that vibrates the source of our body's tick. You know, there's some energy that connects all of our hearts to a source, and that is generated by, you know, the earth plane and the sun to keep our body and spirit alive. And when the time comes, then, you know, we go into a different kind of a world with different rules and regulations upon gravity and maybe other energy fields. But we're talking now about how we could perhaps put more tools in our toolbox to use for the future. We know that the magnetics of the grid is in fluctuations, and some days it's worse than the others. And there are changes because of this. Now, people could track this, and I am looking for this really good site on the NOAA channel that they have taken offline, and it shows the magnetic energy fields coming out of the North and South Pole. And one day before, on 3 of these various earthquakes that we've had of 7.8 or 8.8, the ones that started with Christchurch a couple years ago, those magnetic field lines were wrapped really tight in a spiral. And then the next day we had a powerful earthquake. So there could be a pattern there where people could check it out. But as of late, I knew that they took that site off because people were using it in a research way. And so we don't have that one specifically, but I know just before, on March 8th, that was like about 3 days before the Japan incident, well, a lot of people felt dizzy, and a lot of people just got sick that day. So we are related to this magnetic field of the Earth. So these changes have come in other cycles as well. We've had major upheavals, major wars, and conflicts that have just put like blisters in the system, where there's like an anthill that got put in with some wasp or something like this. So all that intense energy is happening again in various places of the Earth, and, you know, especially around the 33rd parallel, which we sent out some energy since we're broadcasting from that parallel line. And that ley line is connected to Iraq, Iran, and Jerusalem, and the Temple Mount. So we are connected. Even the ruins, we did on past shows that the ruins and various stone circle sites are connected to the whole energetic grid system of the Earth. We have these nodal points of 12 major that form a dodecahedron energy field. Now, you know, there was some talk, Chelsea, about a pentagonal dodecahedron. Have you ever heard that phrase? I know there's different geometers that...
Well, I want you to understand what a dodecahedron looks like.
Okay. Well,
a dodecahedron is a carbon-60 molecule, but what it would have is all these facets of pentagons surrounded by the triangles of the icosahedron and all the 12 pentagrams of the dodecahedron. So that's, I mean, just to term a pentadodecahedron is an oxymoron because it has to include the pentagon faces of it in order for it to be a dodecahedron.
okay. Well,
Icosa, dodeca merged together.
okay, so the dodeca has 12 points?
No,
Or
a
is it-
dodeca has 20 points but 12 faces.
12
facets.
faces. Okay.
And the icosahedron is quite the opposite. It has 20
Right, so
faces, and so they co-define one another.
Right, so the points come out of the surface of the dodecahedron, right?
If you were to stellate every point of an icosahedron...
That means cut it off,
No, stellate means to raise up.
raise it up.
Truncate means to cut off. So if you were to raise up every point, you'd be raising up 5 triangles which form a pentagon. And in doing so, that's where the beginning of the growth from an icosa to a dodeca grid emerges. From every point, it raises up 12 pentagons, or 12 facets of that particular 5-pointed a geometrical figure that most people represent by a pentagon.
Okay, so we have, people that have researched said 12 nodal points, but that's just a number. Aren't there just more? Could there be more than that? 12 nodal points?
Well, if you look at the grid maps that were formed by those that have followed the sacred sites and all the magnetic anomalies on the planet, it has always been a carbon-60 model. So the carbon-60 includes the icosahedron as well as the vector equilibrium, because that's what spawns the emergence of the metamorphosis from the tetrahedron into the, octahedron, cube, icosahedron, dodecahedron. And then the stellation of that is the rhombic dodecahedron. And so what you see is an emergence of all of these geometrical figures creating lines of influence as they cross each other, some of them being standing nodal qualities and some of them being upwelling and inwellings of energy. So, but all significant in their placement. And if you look at the Beth Hagen's map or the Buckminster Fuller's map or the harmonic 33 of Bruce Cathy, and there's been several other people that have used, the Russians have a grid map, and it's all based upon the same thing.
Right. I remember reading about the cosmonaut in Russia that had that paperwork.
And the interesting thing is that most people don't think in terms of the North Pole and the South Pole as actually being a convergence of three poles together. We have our geographical North Pole, which is the pole that the Earth spins on. We have the magnetic North Pole, and we also have, that forms an equilateral triangle, a geomagnetic pole, which forms the balance between the two.
So it's the magnetic north energetic line that is moving. Ever since 1831, James Ross has found that it was moving at a rate of 40 kilometers per day, but now we're moving anywhere from 4 times as fast as that. So,
well, if you see that it moves, and this is just something that on a daily basis could be measured to go one way or the other, then you know the geomagnetic pole is also moving, and all of this is spinning around a geographical pole, which could slip at any time based upon the liquid molten core of our planet.
And that would depend on the magnetic field, because it resonates right with that.
And it's really about certain cycles that show how sometimes that geographical pole actually begins to migrate towards the sun. And you can see this in reference to Uranus and Neptune have done that, where their poles are almost facing the sun and also have passed their equatorial plane as to where they are assumingly in observation, rotating backwards with their moons going in the opposite direction,
right,
because they have actually flipped their poles.
Right, and Uranus and Saturn and Venus have all three given information that their spinning cycle has slowed down. So I went and checked the Earth's rate, and it hasn't been significant enough to make a change, but the magnetic field, the magnetic North Pole, has changed significantly, where the airport down in Tampa and other places have had to move their magnetic line so it would match up with the compass that the planes were using to land. So I would think that that's a significant movement.
Well,
but it's all variable, depending
yes,
on what actions and fields act upon it.
Well, there are orbital mechanics at play, and the best way that I could probably inform your audience is to give them a visual. Everyone's seen how a yo-yo works. Well, I kind of grew up with a yo-yo in my house since my dad broke the Guinness Book of Records way back when, and also did it again in the 70s, and was responsible for all of these toys. But he would explain the cosmos to me in reference to a yo-yo. Okay, so we have all these planets that have orbits around the sun that are not quite circular. They're almost slightly askew, and they form like a little oval. And like a yo-yo, as we are coming towards the sun into our perihelion, we are actually gaining in speed, and that becomes our winter. You know, we're closer to the sun during our winter, even though the northern hemisphere is cold. And then as we begin towards our equatorial crossing the plane at springtime, we begin to slow down. And so every planet, depending upon where they are in position to the aphelion and perihelion, are doing exactly the same thing. So to say that certain planets are slowing down, well, yeah, that's true if they're in their aphelion. And they will speed up if they're in the perihelion. But you get the dance of all these planets working together, and it forms a great billiard game in the sky. And the amazing thing is, I mean, look at the heavens. What supports all that? You know, we're not hanging by a tether out there. We're supported by the great magnetism of our solar center, our solar disk, which is supported by, you know, the super black hole in the middle of our galaxy, which is supported by perhaps a super huge black hole in the middle of a so-called known universe.
And perhaps could be conditioned upon the energy that's coming through the Milky Way at present, with updates with Professor Paul Lavorent. And more gamma rays coming through. And Keys of Enoch said that we're moving to another place of ultraviolet light, which would be a different color code. So if we're based on 8 octaves, like the periodic table and its valence rings, and these different subsets of microcosm to macrocosm, as we can relate our line of advancement. So if we're in 8 color codes, then we're going to go for the next spectra of light, which could, you know, put 2 fields on us at once, or maybe 3 fields if the energy is high enough, to where it might like pulse through, and there'll be enough energy to withstand on that next level to maybe create another one at the same time. I think that's why everything is so variable to the energy that we have within us, or the emotion, which is energy and motion. I mean, I think today's time people have surges in energy. It could be negative or it could be positive. You can look at the movie Cops, you know.
Well, to me, it's all nutrition. It's what you do with that.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here today to find out, what can we pull out of our toolbox so we can put together to make, you know, something of a utopia happen here. Well, I mean, because we went through this cycle before.
We're here, and know that your soul is taking many journeys to be here to witness some grand event that's going to happen in our lifetime, absolutely. Not only as great cycles are emerging and converging upon one another. I mean, the 2012 convergence is about us actually leaving that particular sector of our galactic astrology from Sagittarius into Capricorn. So, you know, that particular Capricornian moment, and then also us in retrospect to the session of the equinoxes,
Tropic of Cancer,
moving back into the, you know, we are in the age of Aquarius, and when the convergence of Aquarius in the next 2,000 years moves into that of Capricorn, everything will be on this direct alignment. And so I believe that we have time as a human race to still evolve and make that grand leap and grand gesture to become galactic citizens.
Yeah, well, I have noticed through trends that since 2010, that the energy that's exhibited in the heavens from Sagittarius, as you're saying, to Capricorn, in that area, that's December, January overlap, right? Well, there was, on the 31st of December, the blackbirds died on 2010, and that 31st of December, the same day, but a year later, 2011, they died again. And the reports that we received was that it was because of fireworks, but, you know, no other time has fireworks been a problem. So, and also they were exploded from the inside out, like there was an intense energy that came upon them, or perhaps maybe the magnetic field had a hole there or something. I don't know, but it's up to more research. But there seems to be a lot of anomalies that happened the last couple of years during those times, and many fish die-offs. The fish were floating in almost every harbor up and down California here, and different animals that beached themselves. It seems like there was a shift. Then also David Sarita's information, well, he was studying with JPL and others, that the sun, well, and according to a guy that lived up in Greenland, the sun rose 2 days early. And it was supposed to show itself every January 13th, but it came up 11th on January 11th, so 1/11/11. And that was an interesting phenomenon because it's never come up days early like that. You know, it comes up every year, every day since January 13th. But since that was off, and that was off for a bit, you know, we are having fluctuations out there. And many books have told us to prepare for this time of change. And even my calendar states change, and definitely the beginning of a new, something of that nature. But I believe it is a consciousness thing because they can't really write it down. I mean, I think it's a consciousness shift, and we have the ability to run it, to write it, and that's why we've been kept in the dark all this time.
You talk about toolboxes, and the greatest tool we have right now is to ponder and contemplate all of the things that are out there, and to find your personal truth among all that, and make preparations for yourself.
Yeah.
Whether it's for the physical body or for the soul. Because, that's
well, and the connection between both of those is an element of service. If you're of service to someone, then you would help prepare physically, and you would help prepare, in a dynamic, energetic, spiritual way, as we put it. Because both of those are related to consciousness, I believe. It's kind of funny that it all relates, but it does. I mean, I think that for me to, it would be like Tom and I were talking yesterday about service. Service is what's going to get people through if you serve other people, and then that will spark everything. So, or whatever way you feel like, you can help the most.
Well, I look back as to how we have been served by the great masters of antiquity that have left us all of these cycles written down so that they knew that we would be experiencing these same cycles again. And it's all been there.
Right. Well, that
let us know that we have the capability to alter the outcome of any of this through consciousness.
Right. Well, I believe that to be true, too. And it's interesting how they did write it down and gave us the tools. And then that information was kind of unplugged from the mainstream consciousness about what you can do in your thought processes and energetic field movements and such. I mean, people experiment with it in today's time. Run an experiment about, putting your consciousness into something and creating the outcome you want. But I think the energy behind that is the most important thing. It has to be a delivery of like when your will meets up with your heart, meets up with the energy of the universe. A lot of things are in connection. And, people have doubts, and the doubts are the biggest problem that put a damper on the thing. You've got to live it like it's happening. So I think there's going to be a time, and we can use that energy to make that happen. And a whole reality will just present itself. So that's what luck is, when, the opportunity meets your preparation, and then you're ready, and it happens. So that's why the now moment, I'm saying, is, important, especially the coming years when more people are on the bandwagon.
Well, look in terms of, here we are, human race, faced with certain dilemmas here. We have probably 95% of the population trapped in social consciousness, working towards their own form of what they call government of the planet, which is based upon global corporations and gold, literally, or money, and that type of society, at least a utopic society, that won't work. It will have to be a fair exchange of energy where everybody is equal. And, we talk about Solon's Republic, where it was meant to have, leadership only by vote, for those that were the learned scholars of the day that were prepared to make choices for the people who could vote it in. Now, we've lost that ability. Look at our government. There is absolutely no vote that really counts today.
Oh, no.
It's all
in fact,
farce.
We have other countries that own our voting polls. I mean, go figure that. Wouldn't you want it in your own precincts and everything like the rules were before? And, it was so sacred, the ballot, before that absentee ballots actually made it to the military.
And do you trust anything electronic when anything can be manipulated?
Oh, yeah. So, they can make it whatever they want, especially if you're in a digital world. Digital's more playable by the machines because they can do the dot process instead of analog. I think analog makes it more difficult for them to plug in. But somebody on the chat is talking about Schumann resonance, and yes, 1990 or so, the Schumann resonance was 7.86, things like that, and that's an energy that comes out of a cavity of the Earth, and it's sparked by a resonance outside the Earth, like lightning and things like that. So it does resonate the capability of the Earth at that moment in time to project a wave of energy. And it was 7.86 was the highest, and it has moved up. Well, Drumblo says 9.6 hertz, and I can't remember what Greg Braden says, but they all do come into conclusion that when we reach 13 hertz, that is a point of a turning point for us, like the inflection point in calculus, where you have the opportunity to move in a different direction, to have a different vibratory field around the whole entire Earth. So many people who study that feel like if we bond to the Earth, like if you eat organic food and you resonate with the Earth and you go on walks, and you can maintain that field of energy within the city too, but it's always good to feel that vibration of the Earth and eat her foods and become her vibration. Then it's better that we will move with the planet, to that consciousness.
Yeah, the perfect balance of any human or biological organism on the planet is that of a balance between alkaline and alkaloid.
Yes, and see,
acid.
That's exactly right.
That also is supposed to be in balance with the human frequency. When you think about where acetic meets the alkaline, you would want to be above 7.
Yes, well, and see that because above 7, cancers don't grow. And it's an interesting fact that you bring this up, because if I were to teach school, I was a teacher before, but actually open your own school where you can teach patterns and how cycles of time have patterns. Even chemistry has patterns, titration points. Calculus has patterns. We reach inflection points and you go down a different road. So, mathematically and chemically, you can all relate everything into patterns, which relates into shapes, and that's forms of sound, music, vibration, harmonies. That's how the Mayan calendars work their world, with harmonies. It's harmonics. The Hunapku is the harmony of all things. Like the Logos in the Bible is the ratio of harmonics. Word comes from, the harmonic ratio. So everything is in a pattern. Our whole being is in a pattern. When you're born on this earth, you're born into a specific month pattern, Pisces or Virgo, all these signs. But if you reside in the center, then you can know all things, and that goes for everything. So also learning microcosm to the macrocosm. I think if you learn about the human body and the way it works, then that opens a whole new world to what we're here for.
Well, yeah, look at us. We are a metal cage.
Yeah.
We're a metal cage with all kinds of infusion
biocomputers
of chemistry running through us, whether it's the saline solution of our lymph system or the blood of our body that's basically iron, copper, zinc, and
we're
the
energy
magnetics.
fields.
The magnetics within our body
mm-hmm.
is the iron, cobalt, nickel. Those are...
And all the salts run our battery, the magnesium and calcium and phosphorus.
And magnesium is a centered molecule of that of chlorophyll. Everything stems in geometry around.
Because chlorophyll is the closest thing to our hemoglobin of our blood, which is a very good connection. Because you can see that geometrically. If you put magnesium under the microscope and the blood and the hemoglobin, you could see all the relatedness on many more levels than just geometry. How fast it's going, but it seems to be trucking right along. And we were talking about magnetic field adjustments and how our biocomputer is part of this photosynthesis that reacts with the sun and the earth when we're in the time of photosynthesis, when we have the sun having its interplay upon us. And then when darkness comes, the whole thing is reversed. There's a sleeping time. We go into dream time. That's another state of consciousness. It's not like the 3D walking world. It could be an overlap of consciousness for many people to actually use that time to go in other places that are harmonic with that particular density. So we're here with Chelsea Flor, and she's bringing the insight of the esoteric text of Madame Blavatsky and Isis Unveiled and several other books that are in her biocomputer. So she could rapidly go through the whole Rolodex. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat, because I finally got onto the chat a little late, but I'm there. And we have our new producer, David Tartar. He is an exceptional person, and He is on the line helping us with the show.
Thank you for your compliment.
Why, thank you so much. And yeah, and his wife, very beautiful people. So,
are you open to taking any calls at this time? Do you want to give out the number in case anybody wants to call in, or are you want to hold off on that?
Well, we could surely do that. That would be great. Oh, darn, Mike. Can you believe my cursor just went over something that it shouldn't have?
That's okay. The phone number, if you want to dial in, is 347-688-2902. And if you want to call in on Skype, I don't know if the servers are actually forwarded to me or not right now, or the calls, but if you want to try Freedom Screen, that'll work on Skype. If you want to try calling through Skype on my handle, it's Harmonic Mint. So I'll let you guys get back to your conversation. Just wanted to throw that out there in case you wanted to talk to some of your folks out there.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that. Appreciate it. And I lost my chat, so now I'm going back to the chat. So, see, I can get interrupted. I mean, I interrupt myself is what I mean on the whole Skype thing. And I'm so glad you're aboard, David, to help me. So next time I'll be able to press the right button. Well, I just put the cursor over it, and it just did it without me clicking anything. So I don't know what happened. Okay, so we have different fields that are bleeding through at various rates. There's different vibrational frequencies wherever you're positioned on the Earth, I would say. I would say, really reality-breaking kind of episodes will happen if you're like in the Middle East and that whole energy's going on with just the pressurized fields that's around there. Or different patterns going on if you're on top of Machu Picchu.
Well, actually, all vibrations are occurring simultaneously. So the bleed-through occurs within your own consciousness and your ability to raise or lower your vibration to match up with any of these variable frequency domains out there. And what is occurring is the energetics in any given location could also be triggered by that location's ability on the grid to take in as nutrition certain magnetic anomalies or specific energy that is solar in its origin.
Right, because the whole proton energy coming from the sun does resonate through the core of the Earth, and if people are in a spot where they're getting not too much of a balance of the magnetic field that comes through, maybe more electrical will come through. So they might be feeling like this chaos kind of energy where their brain might be burning or something. I mean, that's how I visualize it. Like they could become really hot-headed and just aggravated and, like their cell needs to have more moisture altogether or more vitamin D, more oils to calm the brain, so it doesn't fluctuate.
Vitamin D is liquid sunlight.
See, well, that stands to reason that it would be.
And if you happen to be in a place that has that serotonin deficiency syndrome going on, the SAD, then you want to partake in more vitamin D, absolutely. And I guess we can never, as an organism, have enough nutrition that's based upon, that sort of natural food that's given us. And vitamin D is also taken in concordance with that of K2. It's a good supplement to take together. They're both oils, and they both are fluid.
Yeah, K2
and absorbed.
Adds elasticity to the cartilage, or to the arteries and the capillaries. So also we need that kind of flexibility altogether. I think the more flexible we are, the more like liquid light we are. And basically those are just acronyms for a transition that we could, learn from the butterfly, how it goes into a liquid state inside the cocoon before it leaves the ground. Well, when it leaves the ground, it goes into the cocoon, and then it goes to the air. So that's a transition period that it has. And I believe the human can learn from that because it's everywhere. I mean, that particular stage. I mean, butterflies as icons teaching Native Americans.
When you're sitting in samadhi or sitting in meditation, you have the ability in that moment to lay the body at rest, but send the energetic fields of your soul, whatever constitutes you in the spirit form, in a very higher range of vibration in order to connect with the communications of these other worlds. And basically, as a human organism, we're bound by physicality unless we learn to to use the tools in her toolbox to break free.
Right, and those tools are shown to us at all times, but you have to look at it from the perspective of the teacher or the one perceiving it. Like, for example, the little animals that teach you about this, like the butterfly teaching about transformation. I mean, he does transform and moves to a different body of light. So that's like a lesson of incorporating consciousnesses. So if we want to begin to regain our full consciousness and access all of our living, we can access all of our living consciousness fields and put those together, and harmonically you'll reach another point, which, you learn from everything that you see in your world, and sometimes it's so fast you don't even realize that you can get a lesson out of it. So if you slow the pace down or make the pace right with your physical body pace, get things in balance, then we'll be able to see more of what our world is teaching us. But it is consciousness driven, the whole thing.
I just think if you follow natural law, all of these things are shown to you just by the asking. Ask and you shall receive. And it's all based upon the involution of your evolution. The more involved and the more inward you go with yourself, with your thoughts, with your consciousness, you're shown the way.
Yes, I believe that to be true too. And I think that is what we as humanity need to focus on, building ourselves, building our abilities, or eating the right food, not partaking in DNA modified foods, because that would change your DNA. So
it starts with numero uno. You could only, everybody loves to be a proselytizer of a way of life, but you can only start with yourself and be the example by which you want to show the rest of the world.
Yeah, well then if you're living it, I kind of ponder this on my own walking, is that you're not proving it to anybody. You're just being. You're just doing what you do, and you don't prove. Like the world is caught up in a world of proof, to some degree, but we could prove, science and things and on, but it eventually the alpha leads to the omega, and we're just learning so many things in one moment of time that you can actually jump from one rabbit hole to the next. But there is a space in there where if you look at patterns and what the ancients looked at, there seems to be a connection to our world and theirs.
Well, I see it as, if your aim is true, if your goal is one of service, then you become that super magnet that magnetizes those that are seeking your help.
Yes.
So your purpose becomes fulfilled for that reason.
Right. I was looking on the chat, and the time is now. He's very perceptive again, or she. Learn from plants, and they're talking about the passion fruit. Well, if you look at sacred geometry designs in the passion fruit, it's got a 5-pointed flower and then a 3-pointed steeple, kind of. I think they're called steeples or stamens, yeah. And there's a 5 stamen, and then there's a 3 stamen on top of the 5. And that is sacred geometry rules from 3 to 5 to 7. You get different points of interest. So everybody go look at a passion flower and see the geometry in that. And then, like another example from nature is how we learn from nature. All mint family has a square. It's a cube stem. So it's interesting that all of them have different shapes and they grow different leaves at different patterns of time. But that's a whole
San Pedro cactus. If you were to just truncate it, you would see a beautiful flower of life formation.
Yeah, it's actually a 7-pointed star. When I went to Peru, they were cooking that up, and that's how they said they knew what that was by a 7 flower, a 7.
It's going to either be 5, 6, or 7.
Oh yeah, 5, 6, or 7. See, and there you go. How patterns can notify you what different plants are. So that's how I would run a class in mathematics too. And also, the kids would probably grow a garden and learn from the garden and eat the food for lunch, and just be the whole round robin of learning. And if I also had a school, I would put together some chemistry experiments using making different oils, and a lab experiment showing how oils and steam can be separated, and they would learn a lot. But I guess they save that for college level. But everyone can learn from it. So these different changes that we're going through, and the different effects that the change in consciousness has to the whole system. Do you think it could be perhaps that consciousness has rolled through this particular timeline before, and we've had this intense energy set up before, like maybe the fall of Atlantis was one, or the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah, if that story goes with it? I'm just thinking of various cataclysms and also maybe Noah's flood.
Well, it's funny you should bring that up. There is one way of using that term, and it's called the Akashic Record. And that the whole history of the planet is still left intact in a consciousness grid that one can tap into. And whether the cycles, make a resurgence into the exploration of what that may have been at the time.
Where it was stronger and it became matter. It became an actual visual hologram you could look at.
So during end times and previous root races, they were thinking the same things. What do we do? Who's going to survive? Who's the record keepers? Who's the guardian of the secrets?
That's why they put all that information down on the left paw of the Sphinx. And all the other, also the Masons, how they had their information about the Illuminous ones came to them and told them the story. And then they made a club out of it, and I think it was Provocateur or something, and it got a bad name. But the information that's in there is very interesting to how consciousness flows through time. And the very fact that George Washington is shown with a rainbow behind him on the Apotheosis, and that's William Henry's work, and I find that very fascinating because he probably traveled through the Rainbow Tube of Light, which is what the Tibetans call the Rainbow Bridge, the Mystic River, where I think it might even be part of our spectra of light, is that color code, that whole octave of 8.
The more esoteric meaning for the Rainbow Bridge is based upon the secretions of all of the endocrine gland system placing its hormones into our spinal fluid, which would include your pituitary and pineal gland secretions, which form a new crystalline structure, which is the inclusive of all light. And so you actually create a lighted crystal inside the Cave of Brahma, or that angelic brain area.
And that's what I'm getting at, because when I was in Machu Picchu, I was in an elevated state of consciousness where I was just in an ecstasy kind of way. And all of a sudden I was popped into a rainbow tube, and that's what put me on this path to try to figure out what that was, because I left the whole Huayna Picchu mountain, the top of the mountain, and I returned, but I was in this rainbow tube of light. So it was, and the feeling that I had at that time was just beyond anything I've ever experienced before. So it got me to thinking about the different time travel movies that are not movies, but experiments that Montauk did, and Montauk was related to the Philadelphia experiment, like 40 years in between. Mm-hmm. And then the Nazis also had this other project, Rainbow, they called.
That was all part of the Philadelphia experiment.
Oh, yeah? That's time travel.
We took the Nazi, the best of their scientists and brought them here during that time.
That's during Project Paperclip. That's right. And that's when I think, I don't know if I should say this or not, but that our CIA formed a different consciousness. People just started getting sucked into something, and then it became something of like craziness now.
Well, we also were embarking upon destruction of the planet with our atom bombs and hydrogen bombs, and the way that it would alter the planet for everybody forever, including those that live inside the planet. So, you have to know that certain interventions were taking place at this point.
Yes.
And
the energy was high.
That's right. And presidents have had their talking to by who really is the authority here on the planet. And, whether or not they interfere with the state of affairs at one level is one thing, but, they're allowing our childlike mannerisms in the evolution of man to begin to mature, and it's up to us to make that grand leap in consciousness to become a galactic citizen.
Yes, and how we can leap to that consciousness is being in charge of ourselves. That's one thing, and we can learn that magnetic fields have an effect upon our DNA. So if you're not feeling great and you can't change it by your mind, then perhaps you can move to a better energetic place. Also with these changing times, the magnetic field fluctuations, it allows different bacteria to grow and proliferate because the code that causes them to erupt are various vibrations. That's why, like, if you're in charge of yourself, then you would know about bacteria and medicine and how it is really affected by the electromagnetic intensity upon it. They're talking in the chat about sort of on that level about different diseases. But would you like to speak about Rife in that area?
Well, for those that are not familiar with the term Raymond Royal Rife, he was a person of significant research skills and an engineer of sorts who created a wonderful microscope based upon his conceptual ideas, which proved to be 100% accurate, that all living organisms have a particular frequency signature, including bacteria and viruses and different parasitical invaders in our body. So he found that cancer, for one, which changes its many stages from bacteria to viral to fungus, and hides behind biofilms, and is a very clever organism in itself, had a frequency that could be smashed. In other words, if you break the cell of that particular organism, then the cancer will cease to exist. And, given the hardest type of patients that were late-stage cancer, he proved that he could kill the organism that was creating cancer. And in doing so, the word cure cancer is a no-no with the FDA, as we all know. He was more or less sort of booted out of the country for a bit. And because he was met with such disdain from the pharmaceuticals and the AMA and everybody that wanted to keep cancer as a managing disease so all these other corporations could sell their medicines, he pretty much became an alcoholic. And so his predecessor and, I would say his friends that were part of his discovery of the most important thing with the microscope, that can actually see a live cell be destroyed by a certain frequency, to prove that all his work was accurate. The ongoing research in that area up to modern day it's out there. It's not predominantly something that, unless you're seeking it, will be in your face. But if those that are in need of that type of healing aid, now we're talking about vibrational medicine. This is not futuristic, it's here now. But in the future, we might be able to reduce it into a small handheld Star Trekian device out there to be able to take away diseases based upon invaders of parasitical and bacterial and viral infections. And so, basically, most people die from the inside out, from invaders inside the body, not necessarily those from outside. So it's a vibrational, many different forms of devices. There's the Doug coil, which is an extremely powerful frequency device that based upon an amplifier that can bring the amperage up to a higher force field there. And then there's also, the standard type of light bulb and other handheld devices that allow for these frequencies to enter the body and to destroy the organisms based upon that frequency domain.
So, in these cycles that are coming together, or different cycles that are presenting themselves day by day, they have said in prophecies that diseases will come about that haven't been before. They would proliferate. I tend to think that since the magnetic field does have an effect on all growth on here on the planet, I was wondering what your thoughts about a fluctuating magnetic field and allowing different bacteria to proliferate depending on the energy of the field, like the different Schumann resonance. But Schumann is actually different. I was reading about that it's the natural electric wave that goes in the earth. But the other waves that are upon us through wireless and cell phones and other things, it can cause too much of a jump at sometimes and heat us up too quick. So what were your thoughts about the magnetic field fluctuations allowing various bacteria to proliferate?
Well, there's basically, everything is in a system of harmonics. And when you have the radio and the television and your telephone and everything running on these different radio frequency bands, the Hertzian bands out there, and they reach, there's many out there, so that's how they can dial in from a satellite at a particular given frequency, and that's why we have internet, and this is why we have cell phones that go around the world at lightning speed. So, what the body is going to do is have to learn to adapt to a world of these frequency lines that are encircling and encompassing our fields. So whether it's a matter of having a healthy body that creates its own Faraday cage because you have the proper nutrients within the body.
And how I look at that, that's the Merkaba field. As the Faraday cage is your rainbow light body that spins and creates a field around you. And you can do that mentally because we have an awareness that knows that thoughts and the unseen world and our energy level behind those things is what creates a system for us. And this will be more prevalent, I think, when people start finding that the sacred geometry rules and the natural laws are kind of following along with this same sequence.
And so true. Okay, so what do we do as learned students here? Do we have to learn the nutrition aspect of what we put in our body? Do we have to become psychic interveners here and be one with the food that we eat? Because there are some people that say, bless your food, and your food has all the nutrients that you want. And so that is intervening with the food.
Right.
And including the water. We already know that we can put the frequency charge to water by your thoughts. So your emotions and your consciousness and your thoughts have everything to do.
But it's like the field that your thoughts create. Like you can walk into somebody's house and you can feel, oh my gosh, this is heavy. Or you can go inside, wow, it's wonderful in here. You could feel the difference. And you don't have to really kind of, analyze the particles to see where they're jumping to. Are they going to the valence ring?
Well, it's also the use of color.
Yes.
The use of art. And art includes every facet of visual and audible and sensual touch and things of this nature that stimulate the mind into accessing what is so-called beautiful or wonderful or a feel-good energy. And if you put out the energy in the form of some creation of yourself, then you are of service because you're creating an energy field that other people will experience as nutrition when they're in your presence.
Well, that's true. And there's a verse in the Keys of Enoch on page 397 that kind of goes in line with this. It says, it's verse 23, it says, drawing on consciousness light, you create your own geometrian body of light to connect with the wave function of the Zohar light, which allows your outer garment to survive this life and death cycle of physical creation. So, that was Enoch. This whole book is based on, when Enoch came down and there was wheels upon wheels, where they're saying that the Merkaba field is that wheel upon wheel, that you're able to use your geometrian body, your rainbow color of light, body of light, when it's all hooked up into the will and the pituitary gland and the kundalini, and then everything turns on and all the chakras, spin. That's like the spinning upon spinning, which creates a field. And perhaps we haven't experienced that whole thing, unless you're in, I think the energy of the environment matters as well as the energy within yourself, and it has to be balanced, because it seems like the macrocosm and the microcosm, when things happen, everything's in balance. But to that balance, it depends on each individual person where that balance is, because to explain it sometimes you get into words of feeling, and sometimes words just don't do it justice, and it just sounds like cliches and things like that. And those kind of cliches, that's in business where they say you label one of your target market cash cows and it becomes, a thing, like Kleenex. It's actually tissue, not Kleenex. Anyways, that's a whole other story, but that's how consciousness works. But naming and labeling things, it can get cliche-ish at times. But if you look at the overall picture, why are we here? Why are we learning this? Why do we have this information from the past and building upon it? Why did they take all the time to build the pyramid with all those secrets within it? The 369 triangle, the whole geometry of the heavens that you could figure from the whole thing. I think that's just an amazing feat. It all relates to like the whole body and how the chemical aspects of everything that you know in your body connect with other alchemical things. So it's, kind of a deep subject, which we've went down many lines tonight, huh? About how to receive this information that comes in many different forms.
Well, you love to quote Hertog's work in the piece of Enoch, which is a wonderful study into itself, and it could take you a lifetime to actually digest it all. But he does make quotes from the Zohar, and the Zohar, along with the Torah, are the two mystical books of the ancient Hebrew, and it came from a former society prior to that of Judaism.
Yeah, well, I think they're fire letters, right? I mean,
the Zohar tells
before
you
words
that all letters in the alphabet came from fire, and that the origin is the letter B, bet. And so that is the spiral in the tetrahedron that, when looked at from the 26 other positions of the cubic equation, form the 27 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. That is just one way of looking at a sacred alphabet. Arabic follows a similar rule. That's the 26
faces of the cube. Also, Hertog goes into that this changing time we're going to would be two cubes spinning with each other.
Well, the cube has only 6 faces, but it has...
And if you enjoyed the show, it'd be much appreciated if you can donate $1 or $2 to freedomslips.com/support and help Nighthawk out with the station and keep us up and going. We have several hubs around the world, and you could tap in 24/7 and get some kind of show that's on, even if you can't sleep late at night and you're 4 in the morning. Why don't you turn us on, and you can get a round table of some type, or people from other countries reporting on what they know that is interesting and helpful. So we're talking now about different tools you can put in your toolbox to prepare for the changing time. And the first thing you do is be able to be flexible and allow and just be changeable yourself for this dynamic energy that's coming in on many levels than just the physical. So we're talking about consciousness and how we could basically tap into a consciousness that permeates all things. And it's the highest one we know, and through patterns and sound, color, vibrational tones, you can reach a higher state of awareness where a whole tapestry of information can start flowing into your consciousness, and you'll be able to see the world from a different perspective than you had before. It's about like opening your mind up to accept more things, or just resonating with humanity in a way that everyone is here demonstrating their own personal vibration, which is their personal song. And collectively, we make up this musical masterpiece if we turn on the right tones that connect with everything else. So we're talking about the Zohar, and we're bringing that to wavelengths, and how languages basically are these patterns. And before there was language, there was sound, and I believe that the bird tribes, the birds are the ones who brought that connection to us. But right now we're going down another path with the fire letters, and how fire letters represent a flexibility that can relate to music and vibrational frequencies, is what I mean.
It is basically vibrational frequency. We have a tendency, children in our status, to give meaning to words, whereas in the beginning it was a vibration of creation. I mean, basically, in the beginning was the word. The word was a vibration that emerged like a germ that has to germinate by sounding off, that became all of the universal principles that we see surrounding us. Now, us being the participants here as witnesses have to look at this as how do you write down an unknowable truth in a process by which our minds can cognize this in order to understand our path. And the path is one of the soul. And it is the soul's journey as we go through this. And so the Zohar was a sacred text based upon fire letters, which was the Book of Splendor, as it was called, and which was the premise for the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah, as it's studied today and still is.
And it also brings in, when J.J. Hertog talks about it, he talks about the rainbow body of light as being part of that, and the code of many colors that connects us to many more levels of light.
And then again, the Tree of Life and the whole Kabbalah is based upon the endocrine gland system and our ability as we evolve as a bioorganism here, functioning as a vehicle for consciousness. When we can take the vehicle with us, then we have a physical ascension. When consciousness can rise above it, then we have a consciousness ascension. And consciousness ascends every time you dream. Consciousness will ascend every time you will leave your body. Whether you leave it as the final exodus from the body. There are some things that talk about the hidden meaning behind exodus is really the exodus of the body, and how the soul's journey will move on into a sort of, in-between state between life and the next life. And, the Buddhists would call it, that one state that 49 days as you are beginning and choosing your journey of your life history, then you will eventually decide whether or not you want to come back as a human again. And for most people, we love the people we left behind, so we choose to come back through our progeny or through some choice.
Well, yes, and this choice that we have also contains a resonance with it. And I think if we had these previous lifetimes of this connection with people, I'm sure that it took an energetic level to get us here again to this planet. And that energetic level puts us here right now, this time. And we're even talking about things that were written down and left for us in ancient texts, like the Zohar and what the Quran you were mentioning later? You said two. The Zohar, and there was another book?
The Torah.
The Torah, right. Okay, but yeah, if you look back at those, the fire letters in there really look like waveforms. And you can put it in a gematria base with mathematics, as well as it goes back to musical forms.
Well, I don't think most people realize that if you were to actually read the Torah in its origin, remember you read backwards from right to left, from left to right. But there is no demarcation or break of sentences. It is a spiraling of spiral forms of vibration that if you were to put it to music, might be an ascension process of sort that would transform your body and soul.
Well, that's what we know energy fields to do. We are mutable by our energy that's around us. Our DNA changes by what we put in our body and what energy is around us. So that's been proven by Dr. Lipton and, Dr. Moto and Hans Jenny and all the people that put the minute microcosm to test. And that was really valid information for us to build on today and use it. Okay, we are coming to a point where Alpha and Omega seem to be meeting. Like people are recognizing spiritual concepts through the science and quantum physics, quantum mechanics that we have today. And it's interesting how those little lines of connection are connecting, even on scales of very small caliber. So when we talk about the new energies that are coming in, how do you feel? You know how when in the text, the Vedic text, they talk about the flying little ships, and that they have pictures and paintings of people in these little, they look like flying carpets, but they're little kind of capsules that look like they've been flying. Do you think that levitation could be a probability in the future? Or
Levitation is here.
do you think it will be more prevalent? Do you think the energy shifts to allow for that dynamic, or do you think we have to work harder as humans?
But here's the issue. If those that during samadhi or during their yoga practices have managed to create a repelling magnetic field just out of the plane of the earth, then they will levitate themselves. But if they're shown that they can do this, and this particular power is squashed, and those people are generally murdered when they begin to teach this. It's there for those that are willing to, make a lifetime of learnedness to know how to manipulate and organize magnetic fields around the body. That's basically all it is.
Right, and so this information is hidden from us because we'd have more freedom if we knew that we could, travel from place to place if we got all this in sync and, zeroed in where everything was in balance. In the keys, he says also how civilizations are manipulated. We're manipulated from the get-go, especially with the whole aspect of war and everything, get people separated by different issues, and then those issues become big things. And, I don't want to diminish anybody's issue that they want to hold on to, but, they do get us caught in a little stump where you're like in a box. Okay, we can move forward from that because if we really realize that the thought particles which control traditional systems precondition those systems to remain within a limited range of mental activity. I mean, look at the box we have, the Tell Live Vision. I mean, some of the programs on there are just not very exciting at all, especially daytime TV, if there is such a thing now. And, some of the, what do they call them, not sitcoms, but reality TV shows, it would just keep you glued to, like, somebody else's life that might not even have importance to you. However it might, somebody gets something out of it, but for the most part, it's a distraction on what you possibly could be doing with this bioenergy field that you have and all the power that we can muster, not power in a bad way, but to use it in a good way to make things a little bit more balanced.
Basically what it comes down to is what we have accepted in our belief systems as a reality. Now, if you are being funneled from the earliest part of your childhood remembrance, a certain type of education that is one of social consciousness that says what is normal for you is to, walk on the ground and be bounded by these certain principles. But if you were raised in an environment that says you can absolutely do all of these other things, then you would not have the limitations placed upon you in consciousness that has to be removed before you can go there. So it's about purging the old program and writing a new one.
Yes, and I think that's what we're doing here at Revolution Radio. We're breaking paradigms. Every show has a breakdown of some kind of paradigm. And it just interests me when I can flip on the channel and listen to any one of the hosts and bringing up information that is relevant to our times, which is very changing at the moment. So that's why it's always good to have changing programs and flexing situations. And, many people can grow at many different levels. And if you have a non-judgment attached to it where you can welcome everyone on board that wants to come on and just discuss things that are outside of the box, everybody can learn that much more. So it's not a competition at all. It's like opening up the grid, putting some facts down, researching them, and then knowing on top of all that, things like portals and stargates do exist that we've been talking about because our military is in charge of and different wars are fought over the entrances of these stargates. And, different movies have been able to be released, only that much information that they want you to know, but there are some overlaps with information that's out there, and we do grow, and eventually I think the undeveloped light will really know that they're here to learn from us. And there's a little flicker of light right there, and that was funny, but they don't realize that yet. So there's like only light and undeveloped light because everything was light before, and there's different resonating qualities to that and how bright you can intake. Like Dr. M on the chat was talking about magnesium. A deficiency of magnesium leads to renal colic. So I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's part of the battery, so that excites the whole upper system of your vision, your pineal, hypothalamus, and you could get hooked on with having those battery salts in your body at the balanced level. And this balanced level is what makes the machine go, makes the light turn on. And then you have the whole energy around your body. And, there's many books that talk about this energy that's around our bodies. I mean, like different prophets have walked into a room and everybody feels it. You feel it at conferences like that, and it's great, and that's transforming for everyone. When you have places of gathering. Also, Native Americans know about the energy behind gatherings, and it makes it real special. On that note, the Star Knowledge is having a conference on 12/12/12, and Chelsea Flor will be speaking. She's my guest today, and for many days until we get all the information out. She'll be speaking at Star Knowledge in Phoenix on 12/12/12. Laura Eisenhower's going to be there, and many others. Bear Cloud's going to be there. He was a guest of mine before, and Golden Eagle is going to be there as well. And it's just a really fun time. And if you'd like to come out to Phoenix 12/12/12, come out.
Star-knowledge.net.
Yeah. Star-knowledge. Say it again.
Star-knowledge.net.
Yes.
Or go on Facebook and just punch in Star Knowledge Conference, and everything will come up.
Yeah, and they're not, they're flexible, real nice people. And basically it becomes a ceremony, and people use all the talented energy that comes, and you form like a bubble. Last time they did a pop tent of an icosahedron right up in the middle of the forest in Mount Shasta, and it was just awesome because the river was running right beside us, and we all got these little cabins that surrounded it, and it became a real nice meeting place. And people got pictures of orbs that just flooded the whole inner space of that icosahedron. And what many people do who are healers, and that whole group is healers, everyone is, but they really know how to use and put their intent behind the energy. It becomes a real place where you can shed anything that doesn't fit you anymore. And you could just say it and will it, and it happens, and you're changed when you come out of there. And so it's a real nice place to gather and commune, and money is not the topic, and it is a great place to change.
To have an experience that would, I would say, shift your paradigm, give you a different conception of what is yet to come and how you can interact with the energies that are going to be upon us within the changing years.
Yes, so we all know that the intensity of the energy has, more is happening in one moment in time than it ever has been, and it will only get more and more until we reach that 0 point. This is Dr. Kellerman's work, and Ian Lungold actually put the videos on YouTube. He's not with us anymore, but go on YouTube and Google Ian Lungold or Dr. Carl Kellerman, and they have a great presentation on how the energy is being met today with our consciousness, and how we are basically moving into, which most people probably on the Revolution Radio already know, we're moving into a galactic connection with, everything that's out there. We came from one cell to tribal people to group-oriented, and then planetary-oriented, and then we move up to galactic, and then co-creators. So we're here to use everything that we learn in this whole lifetime and many other lifetimes by reading the material people left behind, so we can make a difference this time. And I think that's probably the ultimate reason why most of us are here on the planet, and some don't know a game is going on, and some are just sitting on the fence watching, but others are really ready, willing to participate and, make the change that we're all here to do. And I think that change is like our choices. Our choices have a lot to do with it right now in the fundamental here and now 3D world, because that choice will lead to something else, and it might be more expansive than we ever realized. So we got to keep on plugging on and doing what floats your boat.
Plugging into a grid that suits you. Because what we do as human beings is, we adopt the belief system. And then when it no longer serves you, you drop that belief system and find another.
Yes.
So,
beliefs
basically,
do cause experiences. It's true.
Basically, it's about fueling yourself with knowledge. That is your best defense against anything that's coming your way, and your best offense for being able to make the proper choice for every, thing that comes your
Because
way.
if you know that beliefs cause experiences, back in the day, I asked myself, is shape-shifting really real? Because I read a book on it. Well, I swear, the next couple of days, I met a shapeshifter, and he shapeshifted right in front of me, and it was just an amazing kind of altering experience for my little paradigm right out of college. So I knew that, okay, this existed, and I asked the question before it happened. So our questions and our inquiries really do add up to something. And also I put my beliefs I put them to test. I put my beliefs to test to see if I can get an actual outcome from the environment. It has worked many more times than, well, I could probably write a book on it, maybe later. But there are many choices, and our choices do add up to making our reality, and it's true. And the energy behind it fuels it. But I think we have just a few moments left here. But do you want to say anything that sums up what we were talking about, Chelsea?
Well, in closing, I mean, here we are. We are a bioelectric magnetic organism that has the capability to be not only electrifying in the way we can ascend our energy bubble around us, but also magnetic, which means we can draw to ourselves the abundance, the experience we need, the teachings that we want to learn from. You have within your power and within your range to pull that in your sphere of what I call this, your macabre or your biofield or your extended energy, which is in that invisible realm, but whose effects are felt by everybody that you become in contact with. And so here you are in these stages of this particular cycle, which you chose to be here in body, soul, and spirit, to have an experience and to witness what is going to be occurring in our lifetime and happening very shortly. And when all cycles begin to converge and we see, Mother Nature at its worst and finest, remember she's going through growing pains as well. And as we see, the cycles that have happened before that have been destructive on this plane of existence, then we have to know to make the right choice to whether to meet this head on physically or to meet it head on with a fierce soul that's capable of seeing and standing outside the bubble of this arena of experience and be a light worker from either side of the equation here. And that's really what it comes down to. We're more than just a physical body. And what inhabits this physical body is the consciousness and energy of the soul and the spirit working towards its own evolutionary principles.
Yes, and when the body puts on these codes of light, we resonate the physical body, the physical consciousness, to a new level of understanding. And this level of understanding does tap into the grids of information that are in that frequency field that resonate in a harmonic with that, and it causes us to get sparks of information, and perhaps you could start seeing other things that weren't in your physical reality, because all space and time could become one in one moment when you're bringing all those lighter fields to this field and anchoring them in, so you have this whole energetic field around you. That's why boundaries are important. If you had a boundary of space and you filled that up with a particular energy, then that would be more powerful than no boundary of space. And that's how the void was created, wasn't it? Energy came out and resonated with something, and it started to spin and formed a boundary.
It is the light whose presence is everywhere, whose circumference is nowhere.
Chelsea, can you say that again slower? I want to make a t-shirt of that. The light?
It's the singularity, whose light is everywhere, but the circumference of the light is nowhere. So you're talking about being immersed in the source.
Yes. Yes, and that's an energy field. That's an energy that beats all of our hearts, that creates all the food that grows on this planet. And, it's amazing the levels that nature teaches you if you live on a farm. It's a lot different than you live on a farm or if you have a few trees. Sometimes a few trees and plants can help too, but a farm is amazing synergistic communication.
Well, I want to say in closing, though, that humanity in a state of crisis seems to rally and be at its finest. The necessity is the mother of invention. We will find ways to be able to survive, be able to start again, be able to maintain as much of what we call our comfort zone right now, and take it with us.
Okay, on that note, it's very interesting that the Keys of Enoch, J.J. her talk goes into this about using your light body to be able to permeate all space and make all space like the levels of an onion, basically, I'm paraphrasing, permeate out so all space becomes one. And it's the now moment, that moment of 0 point that we are all reaching to if we're conscious